Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. We're coming to you live today from the SiriusXM studio in Los Angeles, where I will be speaking later at the All In Summit. You know, the All In guys, David Sachs and company. He's a frequent guest on this show while they're having just a huge summit with a bunch of mostly tech people. I don't know what I'm doing here, but they invited me and I like them, so I said yes. It should be pretty interesting. We'll bring you highlights later this week. It is debate week, more importantly, with the hugely consequential showdown between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. It happens tomorrow night, Tuesday night. And just in time, overnight, the Harris campaign has finally added some policy to her website. Remember, it's been all merch and LGBTQ pictures of her in like rainbow gear. Well, finally, we have some policies. Oh, great. Great. I'll bet you the ABC team is like, fantastic. Now we've got something to pour over. Later today, Adam Carolla is going to be here, but joining me now, Larry Elder, host of The Larry Elder Show. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. You don't need me to tell you that life is precious, that it could all get taken away in an instant. That's why I want to tell you about My Patriot Supply and their 4-week emergency food kit. It's got everything your family could ever need during a crisis. With over 2,000 calories per day, there's enough to go around during times of social unrest, government crackdowns, or, God forbid, an attack on the homeland. The food lasts up to 25 years. Think about that. Ready whenever disaster strikes. It's peace of mind. We've seen mass panic in our lifetimes before. Don't take your family's safety for granted. Right now, you can get $50 off their 4-week emergency food kit. Go to preparewithmegan.com and save $50 on your 4-week emergency food kit. And My Patriot Supply will send it over as fast as humanly possible. Get your 4-week emergency food kit now at preparewithmegan, MEGYN.com, preparewithmegan.com. Larry, great to see you in person.
Megyn, nice to see you in person, too.
Yeah, it's so fun to get on the road. California is absolutely beautiful. It's so sad that it's run entirely by Democrats.
This is our second time. I first met you in 2016 in Cleveland when you interviewed me.
Wow, gosh, you're right.
Yeah.
That
I must have
like
made quite an impression
lifetime.
because you completely forgot about it.
No, I mean, of course, I've interviewed
Larry,
you
the
many
first time I'm
times.
meeting you in person. Well, actually, we met in 2016.
I can't, like, when I drive around here, I'm like, it has so much potential. If only they would have more than Democrats running the show.
Well, I tried, as you know, in 2021. I ran for governor. And I raised $27 million in 7 or 8 weeks. That's how many people were angry at what's going on here in California. We have lost about 1 million people in the last 3 years. The average price of a home in California is twice that of the national average. And the number one reason that people cite when leaving California is they cannot afford the price of a home. And the price is so high because of the relationship that Democrats have that have dominated this state for decades. There isn't a Republican elected statewide in California in over 20 years. And they're in bed with the environmentalists. The environmentalists don't want any new construction. As a result, you have a supply-demand problem.
It's almost like a preview of what Kamala Harris wants to do to the United States.
Right. And she has been in this state 8 years as a DA in the Bay Area, 8 years as an AG in California, and then senator and now vice president. What's going on in California is a coming attraction to the country if, God forbid, she becomes president.
So she is hauled up in, I guess, a hotel room right now in Pennsylvania, getting ready for the debate. She's been there for several days. I think it must be 6 now, according to the New York Times yesterday. It had been 5 then, doing debate prep that looks like the real thing. They were saying that they created the mock stage. They have Philippe Reines, who played Trump when Hillary Clinton was preparing to debate against him, dressed as Trump, acting as Trump, and she's going over and over and over. Trump is sitting with people who talk to him about policy. He just doesn't do it like she does it. But of course, all of his interviews have been debate prep in a way, and she's done one. One in nearly 2 months now as the nominee. And so what are you going to be looking for at tomorrow night's debate?
Well, the first thing is I would tell President Trump, if I were asked, and I wasn't, don't underestimate her. She has been, as I said, DA for 8 years in the Bay Area. She won. She beat somebody that was the favorite to win AG race in California. She got reelected. And, of course, she ran for senator. Every time she's been on the ballot, she's never lost. She did run for president, but she bailed out before the first contest, so I don't really count that. Every time she's been on the ballot, she has won. So don't underestimate her. She's also a lawyer. She's also been a trial lawyer. You're a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. And lawyers are trained to debate. That said, her job is to somehow divorce herself from the fact that majority of Americans believe are on the wrong track, and they're on the wrong track economically because of the spending, because of the ridiculous amount of money that Joe Biden spent. And often she was a tiebreaker in the bills that were the big spending bills. She has said that she's the last person in the room whenever Joe Biden makes a major decision. That would include Afghanistan, so she owns that. She owns everything. So her job tonight is to somehow divorce herself from the bad things and say, I'm a fresh new candidate, even though, frankly, I'm the incumbent. That's her job. And Megyn, it doesn't matter what she does. She could babble like my cousin Vinny. It doesn't matter. The media will say, refreshing. She prepared. She was unafraid. She was calm. She was poised.
Yeah.
She wasn't going to be bullied. It doesn't matter what she does. She could fall down. She could just start babbling like a baboon. It does not matter. The media is going to praise her. And no matter what Donald Trump does, how controlled he is, how he stays focused on the issues, how he concentrates on saying, are you better off now than you were 3.5 years ago? We have a side-by-side comparison. How often do we have that? Where you have the last 4 years of an incumbent, previous 4 years of the former president. How is inflation? How are gas prices? How is the cost of living? The average family of four right now is paying around $1,200 a month more for the same goods and services as 3.5 years ago. We have a direct relationship to compare apples to apples, and if Donald Trump can stay focused on that, he wins. The media won't credit him, but the individuals who are watching, swing voters and moderate Democrats who are watching, not influenced by ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, will see for themselves the difference.
And what's his challenge?
A challenge to stay focused. Don't get sidetracked on nonsense. He's going to be asked about what he said about her race, as if that matters. When you walk into the store and you're paying more for a pound of ground beef, for bread, for milk, you're paying more for rent. Does it matter what Donald Trump calls her racially? It's ridiculous, but it'll be brought up.
I mean, it's possible she'll skip it because she already had her bite at that apple. But
if she does it, if she skips it, Kamala Harris will bring it up. It's going to be brought up. And what's interesting about that, Megyn, is if you look at studies going back over decades, Black people have higher self-esteem than white people. Black women have higher self-esteem than white women. So if the idea is Donald Trump somehow is demeaning her race, that's only relevant if somehow Black people are suffering some sort of inferiority complex when in fact they aren't. So what difference does it make what he calls her? Does it matter to her what he calls her? She dismissed the question when she was asked that by Dana Bash. She said, let's move on. Trump should say, let's move on.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't matter what I've called you.
So,
and think about what you called me. A fascist, a Nazi, a villain, a Hitler, Darth Vader. What did they call him for the last 3.5 years?
A sexual predator?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, Hitler,
I'm watching Wolf Blitzer on CNN. Wolf Blitzer is one of the more normal ones on CNN.
Supposedly.
There were two women he was interviewing, both of whom called Donald Trump, quote, a convicted rapist, close quote. He is not a convicted rapist, and Wolf Blitzer didn't say a damn thing.
No.
And Joe Biden has, for the entirety of his campaign, claimed that Donald Trump, talking about Charlottesville, said there were good Nazis and bad Nazis on both sides, when in fact, as you well know, he was saying that there were good and bad people on both sides of the debate as to whether there should be a Confederate monument in the public square. Jake Tapper on CNN 2.5 years later says, I went back and I looked at the tape, and Donald Trump was not saying there were good fascists and good white nationalists on both sides. What he was saying was there are good and bad people on the issue of whether there should be a statue of Robert E. Lee downtown. Biden goes on CNN after this and says it again.
Yeah.
And nobody said a word.
Yeah.
Nobody said, wait, my colleague Jake Tapper just said blah, blah, blah. Nobody said a word. He still says it and says that's the basis for his campaign. It was in his first campaign ad, and it's in one of the campaign ads that Kamala Harris is doing too. It's a lie. The whole premise behind Joe Biden's candidacy is a lie, and the media let him get away with it.
She might do that again tomorrow night. She's lying right now about JD Vance, repeating that AP lie that he diminished school shootings as just a fact of life, and we're going to have to learn to live with him. That's not all what he said.
And he said, I hope this doesn't become a fact of life.
He said, I regret this. I regret that we're having to deal with this.
That part was left off.
But exactly, to the point where the Associated Press then had to change its headline.
Right.
But it didn't stop her. She's so dishonest from running with the original version as if she's on some other planet where she's not able to receive updates on the news. She knows exactly what actually happened. She just wants to mislead for political purposes. And it's a big misleading.
And the point is, it's
issue.
out there, and the retraction never gets the same kind of pub as the initial statement does. So the damage is done.
So she's going to lie. We can expect that. I mean, if Trump sticks to what he did at the debate against Joe Biden, it should be a win for Republicans. I've heard a lot of Republicans say, he didn't do that well at that debate. I actually thought he did very well. He controlled himself. And if you go back and look at it, he was on message. I mean, virtually every answer referenced immigration. He had clearly been told there are a couple of issues that are going to win you this election. Stick to those. And he did it. And I think the same approach should be used tomorrow
In
night.
fact, Megyn, he did too well.
Yeah, well.
He killed Joe Biden. He was done.
Well, that's the most interesting thing about this entire election cycle. That went from looking like the most brilliant move ever to the most catastrophic bad move ever.
Yeah, he should have maybe taken his foot off the gas after a while. But it is what it is. I was in the RNC in Milwaukee, and people were giddy about the prospect of Donald Trump getting reelected. And I said, don't think Joe Biden's going to be the candidate. The candidate's going to be Kamala Harris. And they said, well, it won't matter. I said, once she has announced, I know her poll numbers are lower than Biden, but when she announces, the media is going to transform her into a combination of Joan of Arc and Rosa Parks. And that's exactly what they've done.
Yes.
Now she walks on water.
Yes, she is. She's like the second coming of Barack Obama, which is exactly what you said. However, it's not all glorious over on Team Blue. This New York Times Siena poll is not good.
Right.
Not good at all. It's got so much juice in it. I mean, I want to go over the specifics, but it's showing that it's, Trump's up 1 point over Kamala Harris. But the interesting thing is he's never up 1 point. I mean, he's the past couple of election cycles, he was down 9 to Joe Biden at this point. I think he was down, 2 to Hillary Clinton at this point in the election cycle. And think about that. So he was down 2 to Hillary in 2016 at this point. He's now up 1 over Harris. He beat Hillary Clinton.
Right.
And he came within, 20,000 votes in the swing states of beating Joe Biden, even though Joe Biden was up 8 over him at this point. So now Trump's up, which has the left completely melting down. And here are some of the reasons. This is the biggest one. Do you think Kamala Harris represents change or more of the same? 55%, she represents more of the same. Only 25% say major change, 15% say minor change, but the vast majority say she's more of the same.
Right.
Donald Trump, 53% see him as a major change, and the people want change. 60% of them, 61% say the next president should represent a major change from the Joe Biden era.
And that's really remarkable when you consider the resistance. Media Research Center looked at ABC, NBC, CBS. Even though they don't have the same power they used to have, the nightly news programs, they still probably generate around 30 million people every night. And a lot of the other news outlets get their cue from them. 85% of their coverage of Harris-Walz has been positive. 90% of the coverage of Trump-Vance has been negative. You consider that, and the 2.5-year collusion nonsense. The Hunter Biden laptop story was diminished by 51 intelligence officials, and you had platforms like Facebook and like Twitter shutting down that story. You have Mark Zuckerberg spending $419.5 million of his own money on election officials in heavy Democrat areas to get out the Democrat turnout. All of that, and the man is still even in the polls. Can you imagine what would happen if we had a fair media, a media that didn't have 93% of journalists as registered as something other than Republican? Only 7% of journalists are Republican. If we had a fair-minded media, this would be a runaway. It would be a joke. Keep in mind, Bill Clinton said, it's the economy, stupid. The issue is, are you better off now than you were a year ago? If you answer that question, the only people who are better off now are illegal aliens. The average American is not. That should be that simple. If it weren't for the biased media and how they focus on nonsense that Trump says, and they don't focus on the stuff that he says that matters, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Here's what's nuts. The left, of course, doesn't see it that way. I mean, it's amazing, the hate. This guy, Aaron Rupar, who's just one of the worst. He was with Vox. Now he's on his own. He tweets out, whether he ultimately gets 48 or 45% of the vote, Trump having this level of support is evidence of a profoundly sick society. We're sick because we don't see him as the Hitler-esque figure that Aaron does.
Yeah.
And that is representative of most of the leftist reaction to this New York Times Siena poll. It is the gold standard. There's no better poll. And they are in tears over the fact that it's tight.
This business about Donald Trump being a Nazi, this is standard Democrat fare. Ronald Reagan was called, a congressman said, Ronald Reagan gets his fascist precepts from the pages of Mein Kampf. When Barry Goldwater was nominated in 1964, the governor of California said, the stench of fascism is in the air. George Herbert Walker Bush was called compared to Joseph Goebbels by George Soros. So they do this all the time. The reason for Donald Trump getting more than anybody else is because he's taken on the media. He's called them fake news. And so now people trust the media less than at any other time in America, and it's because of Donald Trump. That's why they dislike him so much. There's another reason they dislike him. When he ran in 2016, he was a joke. He was on CNN. He was on MSNBC all the time. Why? Because their numbers went up when he was on. They considered him to be a caricature, a cartoon character. They knew he wasn't going to go anywhere. So what's the problem? Put him on. Numbers went up, numbers went up, numbers went up. Then he began picking off all of his rivals one after another, and they realized, oh my God, I've created a monster. So they felt responsible in part for Donald Trump's popularity, and they blamed themselves. Add to that, Donald Trump calls him fake news, and he is their number one enemy. That's why they dislike him so much.
Oh, it's a great analysis. You're exactly right. A little bit more from the left. Bill Kristol, distressing, depressing, alarming. After everything, January 6th, after clear evidence a second term would be far more authoritarian than the first. After the ever-increasing radicalization of MAGA world, Trump now has more support than he had in 16 or 20. So that's right. He does have more support than in 16 or 20.
Yeah.
Maybe they should stop and think about why and actually think about what they've done to drive his numbers up.
And you mentioned Bill Kristol from the left. He used to, of course, be on the right. That's how tragic this whole thing is. I'm amused by this business about democracy being on the ballot, because for 4 years when Donald Trump was president, you had Hillary Clinton referring to him as illegitimate, her word, and saying the election of 2016 was stolen, her word. There was a poll, a YouGov poll, that found 66% of Democrats believe that the Russians changed vote tallies in 2016 to get Donald Trump elected. Obama's DHS Secretary, Jay Johnson, testified under oath. The Russians failed to change a single vote tally. They tried, but they failed to change a single vote tally. 66% of Democrats believe the Russians changed vote tallies to get Donald Trump elected in 2016. Jay Johnson also said, you know, as far as the impact of the Russian interference on popular opinion, I don't know. I'd have to have a world where there was Russian interference, one where there wasn't. Compare the two. Since I can't do that, I'd have to be a mind reader. I don't know. But there was a study done by NYU Stern School of Management that looked at the impact of the interference, and they found that it was barely measurable. 78% of Democrats, according to Gallup, believe that the Russian impact altered public opinion. So my long way of saying a greater percentage of Democrats believe 2016 was stolen than we feel that way about 2020, but nobody accuses them of undermining the foundation of our republic. It's a double standard. It's hypocrisy.
It's so true. Even last week with this indictment of two Russians and who were accused of starting this podcast network with more conservative-leaning hosts, it was like they're interfering again. And we actually took a hard look at the allegations of the indictment. There's one paragraph, that actually suggests true interference where someone who was allegedly Russian funneled a message down to a podcaster saying, we think the attack on Russia was done by Ukraine, not by ISIS. Mm-hmm. And allegedly the podcast host said, you know, I'm happy to talk about that. That's it. One guy who, I mean, it really is not that popular, with all due respect. I don't know exactly which one it was, but I know it wasn't Tim Pool, and I know it wasn't Dave Rubin, and the others are nowhere near as popular as those two.
Right.
And that's it, Larry. This led the New York Times. It was all over, like, the Russians are in here. One podcast host making one comment in a whole YouTube channel that over the course of a year only had 16 million views. As I said to the audience, we get that in a few days.
Right.
It's absurd.
It advances the agenda that the Russians want Donald Trump to be president. Never mind that Vladimir Putin just came out and said, I support Kamala Harris.
But I think he was trolling. There's zero chance he actually supports Kamala Harris. I mean, who knows? That's Putin. But in any event.
Well, if I were Putin, I would support Kamala Harris.
So would I.
Why wouldn't I?
Yeah, I know, right? Her policies would be better.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know. But, you know, he's got to.
Can I say one more thing about the election interference stuff? Donald Trump is blasted for using whatever means he could legally to overturn, to use their word, the election in 2020. It seems to me, if I'm a Biden supporter, I would want Trump to exhaust every legal mean he feels necessary so that the American people can be confident that the election was fair. In 2000, when Al Gore lost to George W. Bush, about a dozen House members tried to overturn Florida the following January, claiming that the Supreme Court unlawfully stopped the count. 4 years later, when George W. Bush got reelected, 30 House members, plus Barbara Boxer here in California, tried to overturn Ohio, claiming that the Diebold voting machines had been tampered with because Diebold is a company whose CEOs are Republican. No evidence of it, but that's what they did. Fast forward 2016, they challenged 9 states versus the 6 that Donald Trump challenged. Nobody accused them of engaging in election interference. I thought they had a First Amendment to whine, and I felt that they had every right to file whatever lawsuits they want to. Hillary filed a lawsuit with Jill Stein to overturn Wisconsin. Nobody accused her of undermining the foundation of our republic. Donald Trump does the same thing these guys have been doing for 20 years. All of a sudden, he's Darth Vader. It is unfair. It's a double standard. It's hypocrisy.
I mean, if only Donald Trump could say those numbers the way you do, Larry. That's not what's going to happen tomorrow night. That's the problem. Is Trump, he's an effective messenger. Don't get me wrong. He got elected president, so you'd have to be.
Right.
But he can't do it the way you can do it. Few of us can.
Well, I when I ran for president, I withdrew from the race, as you know, and Trump invited me to Mar-a-Lago, so we're speaking privately. And I told him much of what I just now told you, and he was entertained by it. And I asked him, this is sort of off topic, I asked him, do you ever 3 o'clock in the morning say to yourself, why the hell did I do this? Mm-hmm. People now won't buy your condos. They won't go to your golf resort. Half the country hates your guts. They think you're Hitler. Your net worth has gone down because of all this. You ever think to yourself, why did I do this? And he went, well, the country is in trouble, blah, blah, blah. He didn't answer my question. So I re-asked it a few minutes later. He didn't answer. We then stood up and took pictures together. And I said, Mr. President, you didn't answer my question. He says, yeah, I know I didn't.
Really?
So I think that meant that even Donald Trump, as confident as he is, every now and then says to himself, my goodness.
I also think Trump really is a believer that if there's any negative self-talk, it actualizes. If you just listen to the way he communicates, certainly
Right.
about anything involving himself
Right.
or his loved ones,
Mm-hmm.
he never says anything even close to negative. It's baked into him from that positive power of the power of positive thinking by Norman Vincent Peale,
Right.
who was his pastor when he was growing up.
On that level, I first had a real conversation with him in 2016. We campaigned together. We were at a black church. It was in Detroit, if I'm not mistaken. We had about a 20-minute conversation privately. And this is when he was a candidate, of course. And I said, there's one thing I think you should apologize for. He said, I know what you're going to say. What I said about John McCain. I said, no, I couldn't care less. I said, you said that George W. Bush got us into the Iraq war by lying. I said, however you feel about the war, he did not lie. The intelligence was bad, but he did not lie. I've spoken with Condoleezza Rice privately. I've spoken with Colin Powell privately, and they both said the intelligence was wrong, but nobody lied. And I said, you're giving a talking point that Democrats have used. Ted Kennedy said, week after week after week, they lied and lied and lied. You are giving energy to all of that. And he went, blah, 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 blah. But he never said it again. And I noticed that Donald Trump's way of apologizing is not to say the same wrong-headed thing twice. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take credit for that.
Oh, that's good. All right, wait, we're going to get to the Iraq War in a second, in a way, because Dick Cheney's back in the news. I'm
Yes.
sure you saw that. But
yeah.
let me finish with this New York Times poll first. This is sort of the headline that's coming out of it when it comes to minority voters, with whom Kamala is doing better than Joe was, but not as well as your normal Democrat
Right.
does. So Trump support among likely black voters, again, this is the New York Times Siena Gold poll, his support among likely black voters back in 2020, it was 7%. In this poll, it's doubled to 14. When it comes to Latino likely voters back in 2020, it was 31%. In this poll, it's gone up 10 points, 41%. Mm-hmm. And now the left, I've seen so many of them. It could be an outlier. Even the Times this morning. This could be an outlier,
Right.
could be an outlier. May not align.
Right.
That tightness of Trump up 1 instead of down 3 or 4. But do you think it's an outlier, doubling the black vote and up 10 percentage points with Hispanics?
No, he increased his percentage of black vote from 8% in 2016 to 12% in 2020. That's almost a 50% increase. And there are several reasons, but the biggest reason, I believe, is illegal immigration. The cohort most hurt by illegal aliens, and most of these are unskilled with high school or less, are people living in the inner city, black and brown people, against whom they have to compete for jobs. There was a study done by the Civil Rights Commission some years ago. This is before the 12 million illegal aliens have been in the country in the last 3 years. Yep. About 1 million fewer blacks are working because of the presence of illegal alien labor, and illegal alien labor puts downward pressure to the tune of almost $2,000 per year on the salaries of blacks and brown people in the inner city. So the people most hurt by all these people coming into the country are black and brown people, the very people that the left claims that they care about. The second big reason, of course, is cost of living. The people at the bottom are hurt the most by higher prices, and store prices are up almost 20%. Gas prices are up 50%. And the third reason is school choice. The Democrats are adamantly opposed to school choice. Urban education in America is a disaster. 85% of black 8th graders, these are 13-year-old kids, Megyn, nationwide can neither read nor do math at grade level. In Baltimore, there are 13 public high schools.
Say that again. Wait, just say that last stat one more time.
85% of black 8th graders nationwide, these are 13-year-old kids, can neither read nor do math at grade level.
That is horrifying.
13 public high schools in Baltimore, all located in the inner city. 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. 52, 53 public high schools, public schools in Chicago, in Illinois, most of them in Chicago. 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. Now, what's outrageous about this is not just that the Democrat opposes school choice while the elites like Joe Biden and Barack Obama, Kamala Harris have their own kids in private school. It's that teachers who teach in districts like Philadelphia, Chicago, LA, New York, who have school-age kids, don't put their own kids in the school.
Of course not.
The people that know the schools the best don't put their own kids in it. This is outrageous. Half of black kids, 13-year-old, can't even do basic reading, which means half of them are functionally illiterate in a digital economy. Scotty, beam me up.
They just think it's fine because the teachers union doesn't want change,
Right.
and the teachers union is their biggest block of voters.
That's right.
So it's worth the sacrifice.
And biggest block of fundraisers, all the union money.
So it's fine. It's
Yeah.
fine if the black children suffer in schools. It's fine if the black people kill themselves in Chicago, just as long as they keep voting Democrat
Yeah.
or not getting in the way of those who do.
And you mentioned Chicago. Of course, we are all grieving over what happened in Georgia. 4 people killed, 9 people hospitalized, 30 people injured. But just over the Labor Day holiday, 50 people in Chicago were shot. I forget how many were killed, like 5 to 7. And Memorial Day weekend, over 100 people in Chicago shot, 17 killed. And that's just Chicago. And Chicago isn't even as deadly as Baltimore or St. Louis. Nobody says a word about that.
Well, here's the other thing, Larry, is the father of this shooter, this 14-year-old shooter down in Georgia, has been charged now. And I actually have no problem with that because it looks like...
I don't either.
It looks like this guy actually he literally put a loaded gun in the hand of...
I mean, when the FBI or the authorities come to your house and tell you that your kid has been sending out emails saying he's going to shoot up a school, and then you buy him an AR-15 and give it to him, what is that?
And now his father, the grandfather of the shooter, is blaming the son. Sorry, it might be the in-law, but in any event, it's the grandfather of the shooter is saying, there's no way this kid could have grown up in that guy's house without turning into this.
Of course.
But and all of which is fine by me. I really think the parents should have some skin in the game when they behave like this. However, you think any parent in Chicago is going to get charged? A lot of them are just suffering. I've gone out there and spoken with them, but a lot of them actually are fine with it and understand fully well what their young boys are doing with the guns and the gangs.
And Megyn, big picture, 60% of the shootings, the robberies, and the homicides here in America are committed by black people, often against other black people. And the reason for this is the lack of fathers in the home. 70% of black kids today enter the world without a father in the home married to the mother. 40% of all American kids do. 25% of white kids do, which was the same percentage as was the case with blacks back in 1965 when a Democrat, Lyndon Johnson, launched a so-called war on poverty. And since then, we have spent over $20 trillion on anti-poverty programs. What we've done is we've incentivized women to marry the government and incentivized men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. And nobody's talking about that. The other side doesn't do it because they caused it. Our side doesn't do it for fear of being called racist or being insensitive to the heroic job that single black women are doing raising kids. Or if you're black, you'll be called, as I was called by the LA Times, the blackface of white supremacy. So it's the number one social problem in America, and nobody's talking about it. I mentioned it to Trump when I was having this meeting I told you about. He promptly tweeted about it.
That was one of the lowest points in a couple of years when it comes to media fall downs, calling you the blackface of white supremacy. Absolutely disgusting.
I worked hard for that title.
Yeah, right. The badge of honor coming from them.
And by the way, the woman that called me that, her name is Erica D. Smith. And when I finished my campaign for governor, I went back to radio to finish my contract, and I invited her on my show. I don't have fangs. I'm not going to bite her. Come on my show. Talk to me about what makes me the blackface.
There's no way she did it.
And she refused to do it.
The LA Times is out right now saying, yes, California's suffering and we have full control by the Democrats. But that too seems to be the Republican fault. Like, why aren't they just better? It's the Republicans' fault.
Somehow.
Okay. For what? Being just too awful for us to put you into office, and therefore we got stuck with only Dems, and that's why California's in this pickle.
Right.
Okay, LA Times.
Right.
You mentioned immigration and how important it is to Black and Latino voters and to all voters. I mean, it's still polling. It was the number one issue. Now, since Biden has put in his artificial controls just in order to win this election.
And the numbers aren't really going out. They have to redefine what deportation is.
Yes.
So that the numbers aren't any different at all.
But he's artificially depressing the numbers until...
He's gotten it off the headlines.
Exactly right. And the media is so quick to...
That's the main thing.
But just keep this in mind. Mm-hmm. Under Joe Biden, we've had 10.4 million illegals come in that we know about. That's not including the gotaways. 10.4 million illegals. Those are the official stats.
Right.
Under Trump, it was 2.3. 2.3 under Donald Trump in 4 years. 10.4 under Joe Biden. Those are the numbers. But anyway, on the immigration front, in the news today is what's happening in Springfield, Ohio. And it's gotten so bad there. It's Haitian refugees going in Springfield, Ohio, to the point where residents held, it may have been a town hall, or was it a city council meeting, and a bunch of people came and spoke out about the fact that this is by background via the New York Times and the Daily Mail, this is a shrinking Midwestern town. The population dwindled to less than 60,000 in 2014, from more than 80,000 back in 1960. And they really wanted to try to attract businesses and so on, and yet they've had more than 20,000 Haitians arrived, most of them since the pandemic. They've got Social Security numbers. They've got work permits thanks to a federal program that offered them temporary protection in the United States. I've got to tell you, I had a conversation with Omarosa Maningalt, who told me she was the one who spearheaded a lot of this, trying to get the Haitians to America. Not blaming Omarosa entirely, but I know she, even under Trump,
what happened
had
to her,
prioritized this.
What happened to her, by the way?
Yeah, I mean, she fell out with Trump, and that was the end of her. But in any event, it's only gotten worse since the pandemic under Joe Biden, where we've opened the door to these people. And now you've got these residents showing up to speak out. And listen to this one woman. I think this is Glenda Bailey, the older woman, who's talking about what it's like to live there now. Watch.
I'm done with what I'm seeing. It is so unsafe in my neighborhood anymore. I have the homeless that were trying to camp out, and I have made concessions with them, and I try to help them the best I can to keep them from trying to squat on my property. But it is so unsafe. I have men that cannot speak English in my front yard screaming at me, throwing mattresses in my front yard, throwing trash in my front yard. Look at me. I weigh 95 pounds. I couldn't defend myself if I had to. My husband is elderly, and last night, after living in this home for 45 years, he said, "Noelle, guess what? It's time to pack up and move." He said, "We can't do this anymore." He said, "It's killing both of us mentally. I want out of this town. I am sorry. Please give me a reason to stay."
Okay, that was Noelle, actually. That's her first name. The Springfield police dismissed claims the immigrants have caused trouble, saying property crime was only in line with national trends. And the Deputy Director of Public Safety and Operations, Jason Villa, told NPR, "It's sad that some people are using this as an opportunity to spread hate or spread fear," and suggested that we haven't seen some of the things that they're alleging.
Wow.
Like, I'll just give you one more. He's claiming they haven't seen this from this particular individual, but this is another person who showed up at the city council meeting.
And it's nothing but immigrants over there. And I don't even want to seem like I'm coming down on the immigrants, because it's the people that's bringing them down here. Because wherever they're at, that's what they're used to, bro. They're in the park grabbing up ducks by their neck and cutting their head off and walking off with them and eating them
So not an explicit denial, but we haven't seen it. So I guess we're just not supposed to believe Noelle or this gentleman.
As for Noelle, who says she would like to have a reason to stay, the bottom line is that we're all border states now. I remember about 2 years ago, there was a poll that asked the average American how many illegal aliens had come into the country that year. That year, there were 2.5 million. The average answer was 250,000. They were off by a factor of 10. Why? Because most people aren't even aware of this because the media is not focusing on it. I remember when Bill Malugin of Fox News was doing all these wonderful reports, drones overhead showing all these illegal aliens coming in. Then I cut it on to CNN, MSNBC, and for months, nothing. It wasn't until governors like Abbott and DeSantis put illegal aliens on buses and sent them to New York, Chicago, Martha's Vineyard, did the media even begin to paying attention to this. So I think most people are unaware how bad it is. I'm old enough to remember in 1980, during the latter part of the Jimmy Carter administration, Castro sent about 100,000 illegal aliens here, and then about 25,000 Haitians joined them. So we had about 150,000 illegal aliens in the country coming in one fell swoop, and people went nuts. Jimmy Carter did a 180. At first he said, we welcome them with open hearts, open arms. Then he realized people were ticked off. We're talking about 12 million people. Jay Johnson, Obama's DHS secretary, once said, when he was DHS secretary, every day I get a report of how many illegal border crossings there were. If it's under 500, I'm going to have a good day. If it's over 500, I'm going to have a bad day. We've been having 10,000 in one day. He even said later on during this administration, I can't imagine what that is like, 10,000 a day. So most people are unaware of how bad it is, and the media is not covering it. And if they knew how bad it was, they would run out of pitchforks. People would be marching on Washington.
But they're banking on this artificial Band-Aid carrying the day.
Right.
They're banking on the fact that the border bill that they proposed got shot down. And they're banking on abortion. They're banking on abortion, which is now, thanks to all of their advertising, risen to the second most important issue with voters, in particular Democrat voters, but there are definitely some more moderate Republican women, and she's winning with women who are worried about this issue, who want, the freedom to do what they want if they get pregnant, or their daughters and so on. And this is being pushed at every turn, right? And on this issue, she's the winner. How do you think Trump should handle the abortion issue tomorrow night?
Well, let's talk about both those big things. On the immigration bill that Trump allegedly shut down, there were a bunch of Republicans that opposed that bill, A, and B, Trump secured the border in a more secure way than anybody else without one iota from Congress. And Biden on day one began reversing those policies.
Undid them all.
So you don't need Congress to reimpose the Trump policy. So the whole thing is false. It's a lie. And that's their big talking point. Well, we had the toughest border bill until Donald Trump told Republicans to turn their backs on it. You didn't need to have the bill, even if that's true. Regarding abortion, when I ran for governor, I was accused of being a pro-life extremist. And I asked the reporters, please ask my opponent, Gavin Newsom, at what point does he feel a pregnancy has gone so far that to terminate the life would constitute murder? At what point? And nobody asked him. Democrats don't want to answer that question. Kamala Harris was on, I think, CBS. Margaret Brennan asked her that 3 times, and 3 times she said, I want to put back the protections of Roe v. Wade. She said, yeah, but is there a point beyond which I want to put back? They won't answer the question. Every now and then you'll get somebody to answer it, as Bernie Sanders did during one of the debates. He says, up to a woman. If that's true, the logical extension is Dr. Kermit Gosnell, the Philadelphia abortion doctor, Kelly, should be set out of prison. He performed late-term abortions. He didn't hold them down and perform them against the will of the woman. The woman asked for the abortion. He's now behind bars for performing illegal late-term abortions. So the logical extension of how you feel really is that Dr. Kermit Gosnell is a political prisoner who should be set free. Is that your position? We don't know because they won't say.
There is an ongoing debate in some states even about what happens when you attempt to abort a baby and it nonetheless is born alive. Yes. The left will tell you this never happens and it's not a debate and Trump is wrong to bring it up. But in more and more states where they try to ban this, where they try to say you can't do that, you can't let the infant just die on the table, you actually have to give it life-saving care, the left pushes back and says, no, we don't. That too is up to the mother and the doctor.
Right.
So this baby that they tried to kill in utero is born anyway, and now it's on the table, suffering but still alive. And these people want to say, the mother at that point should be able to say, let it suffer and die.
That's how extreme these guys are. The bill that Governor Walz signed allows abortion up to the moment of birth, the most extreme one that I can think of, and nobody talks about it. And all the reversal of Roe v. Wade is to put it back to the states where it was for the entire history of our country until 1973.
That's it.
It's now back to the electoral process. In California, as I said, when people ask me about this, I'm in California. What anti-abortion bill is going to come on my desk? Zero chance of it happening. So wherever you live in a left-wing state, nothing will happen.
The only party talking about doing something nationally on this issue are the Democrats. It's the Democrat Party.
Right.
Trump has said, I'm not going to touch it. I will not be doing this as president. I'm going to let it sit in the states because every state is very different. As you know, you live in California. I've got friends who live in Tennessee. Those 2 states will handle this issue very differently because we're each a little experiment of democracy and culture. And that's the way the founders intended it. And if you don't like the rules in California, you don't have to live here. Kamala Harris shouldn't be able to set the policy for all 50 states. And by the way, she can't. This is not a federal issue. I don't think she'd be allowed to. I think it would be struck down as unconstitutional if she tried to implement.
Antonin Scalia, arguably one of the most conservative justices in recent memory, gave an interview once. He said, I don't know anything about abortion.
Right.
I never studied that in law school. All I know is that it ought to be up to the democratic process and to the voters in every individual state.
Yep.
I don't know.
He used to say that all the time about a lot of issues, like, why would you leave it to 9 judges in black robes to come up with rules on abortion or any of these other issues? It's exactly right. Put it in the people's hands, and that means the people that we elect on a state-by-state basis. Trump's got to get better at articulating that. On the New York Times poll, this is another interesting question. Do you think Trump is too conservative, not conservative enough, or not too far either way? Not too far either way got 49%. Only 32% said that he is too conservative. How about Kamala Harris? Too liberal, / progressive, not enough, or not too far either way. Too liberal or progressive, 47%. Right. Only 9% said not enough, and not too far either way had 41%, which was a decent number, but not as high as 47. Right. So what's happening here is that the Project 2025 thing, Larry, is not working against him. And her attempt to be generic Democrat with no positions that are controversial, and I've reversed all of my controversial positions in a paper statement, isn't working. The American populace is smart.
And the people that feel that she's too left-wing probably are unaware of many of the things that she said that are left-wing. For example, she once suggested that we ought to ban the sale of gas-powered cars by the year 2035. She once said illegal aliens should get health care. She once supported legislation to set up a commission to study reparations. She once wanted a national minimum income. She once said that we ought to reimagine the police. We ought to rethink ICE. Rethink ICE from the ground up. She said so many wacky things that most people have no blooming idea about. Being in the country illegally ought not be a crime. Are you kidding me? So if people really knew some of the wacky stuff that she said, that number would be even higher. And
it's even dumber than that. She said it's not a crime being in the country. It is if they crossed over the southern border or another border
by definition,
illegally, madam.
That's why they're called illegal.
Yes, it is. She's treating them all like they were like, oh, your friend from England came for a visit and he stayed 2 days extra, right? No, that's not a crime.
And she wants a pathway to citizenship for all the people who are here before the 10, 12 million people came here, plus those.
And Nancy Pelosi just said this. She just said this on Bill Maher, that she wants them all in the connection with this crazy California bill that was so radical. Even Gavin Newsom wouldn't sign it, trying to give them $150,000 toward a new home. And Nancy Pelosi was asked about it by Bill Maher, and she was like, how can we give this to undocumented immigrants, he asked. And she was like, well, I want them all to be documented.
That's a mainstream Democrat position. And speaking of being candid, you've got Bernie Sanders on one of the talk shows being asked about Kamala Harris flip-flopping.
Oh, we have this. Well, let me play it, and then you take it on the back end. Let's watch the Bernie Sanders comment.
She has previously supported Medicare for all. Now she does not. She's previously supported a ban on fracking. Now she does not. These, Senator, are ideas that you have campaigned on. Do you think that she is abandoning her progressive ideals?
No, I don't think she's abandoning her ideals. I think she's trying to be pragmatic and doing what she thinks is right in order to win the election.
I love it when I hear honesty.
Yeah.
It's so soothing.
Well, and essentially that's what Kamala Harris said. I haven't changed my values.
Right.
I may have changed the way I articulate them. I haven't changed my values.
Wink, wink.
And here he is saying that, no, she hasn't changed anything. She's being pragmatic to say what's necessary to get elected, and then I'll do all this. Then I'll do all this stuff.
Yeah. We know. We can see that.
And she had the most left-wing record in 2019 of any senator, according to GovTrack, of any senator in the last 2 years, including Bernie Sanders. And then GovTrack removed it from their website.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
All right. So on the subject, back to the Iraq War, Dick Cheney. I mean, is there a more loathed figure on the left, or has there been, than Dick Cheney, right?
Well, Trump.
Before Trump. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, he was their boogeyman.
Yeah.
And now his daughter has come out and said that both she and the dad will be voting for Kamala Harris. And now it is like the second coming. They are so excited about Dick Cheney. Right. He's like, he's basically a statesman. Hold on, here's what he said, first of all. Because first Liz Cheney said it in an interview. He's going to vote for Kamala, and so am I. And then Dick Cheney puts out a statement saying, there's never been an individual who's a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power. We have a duty to put country above partisanship, to defend our Constitution. And that is why I'm casting my vote for Kamala Harris. Bush, his boss, George W. Bush, says he's not going to endorse any candidate this race. Back in 2020, he wrote in Condoleezza Rice's name. In 2016, he did not vote for Trump or Clinton. And here's some of the legacy media reaction. MSNBC headline, GOP icon. Dick Cheney calls Trump a threat, votes for Harris. USA Today, they're the worst. Honestly, I think even the Washington Post is not as left as USA Today. Dick Cheney picks Kamala Harris, giving conservatives a final path to save the GOP from Trump. How is this giving the conservatives a path? They've been arguing this more and more, though. The GOP needs to lose with Trump in order to learn their lesson about how bad he is. New York Times, it potentially helps create a model for deeply conservative voters reluctant to back Mr. Trump to vote for a Democrat for the first time in their lives. No, New York Times, It doesn't. These people don't understand the right half of the country at all.
Notice the very different reaction when RFK Jr. came out and supported Trump. They didn't say RFK Jr., scion of the most important Democrat family in American history.
Yes.
Nothing. They completely ignored it.
GOP icon.
They call him a
Democrat
nutcase.
icon.
They call him a nutcase.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it reminds me of when Ronald Reagan died. All of a sudden, the same people that hated Ronald Reagan's guts were calling him a statesman and honoring his death and all that stuff. That's what they do. And they hate Dick Cheney. They despise Dick Cheney. But because Dick Cheney has now come out and said he wants to support Harris, suppose he come out and said, I want to support Trump. What do you think they would have done?
Oh, yeah. We would not be hearing the term GOP icon. Here's just a little flashback on how they used to talk about Dick Cheney. Watch.
Vice President Cheney's been the most dangerous vice president we've had probably in American history.
To have had somebody that radical in the vice presidency for 8 years. How does that affect the party? When George W. Bush left office, his approval rating was 22%, but Dick Cheney's was 13%. Herpes was more popular than Dick Cheney when he left office. Dick Cheney is the concentrated distillate left in the bong water. He is everything America most hates and most hated about Republican radicalism in those years. It all went through him.
You can always tell when the Republicans are restless because the vice president's motorcade pulls into the Capitol and Darth Vader emerges.
Darth Vader. Herpes.
And with Cheney, I believe it's personal. His daughter was stomped by the Trump-backed candidate during the primary. She lost by almost 40 points.
Yeah,
she lost
points.
by more points than any other incumbent running for re-election during a primary. In fact, I was with a woman who beat her once, and I said, you beat her like by 38 points. She said 40. So it's personal.
It was bad.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting because there was a moment on Fox News when I had Dick Cheney on. It was actually an incredible moment because people ask me, you ever get nervous when you're interviewing somebody? And honestly, this is one of the only ones that comes to mind. I actually was nervous because Dick Cheney used to be kind of scary. And he was coming on that night with Liz Cheney. They were going to announce some initiative that they were pushing jointly. And that morning, the gall, like the hubris, he dropped an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal blaming Barack Obama for the Iraq War. Okay, you can blame a lot on Barack Obama. The Iraq War is not one of them.
Obama opposed it.
That's how he became president.
Yeah.
That was one of his main policy
You take that
positions.
away, he's not president.
So
that was his biggest distinction between him and Hillary.
So Dick Cheney drops an op-ed blaming Barack Obama for the Iraq War. And I understood that the beginning of my interview with Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney was going to have to change dramatically. And watch this, and I will tell you, I do think, you can hear I was a little nervous, but I will submit, if you hear in his answer, he was too once he heard the question. Watch. In your op-ed, you write as follows: rarely has a U.S. president been so wrong about so much at the expense of so many. But time and time again, history has proven that you got it wrong as well in Iraq, sir. You said there was no doubt Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. You said we would be greeted as liberators. You said the Iraq insurgency was in the last throes back in 2005. And you said that after our intervention, extremists would have to, quote, rethink their strategy of jihad. Now, with almost $1 trillion spent there, with 4,500 American lives lost there, what do you say to those who say you were so wrong about so much at the expense of so many?
No, I just fundamentally disagree, Megyn. You've got to go back and look at the track record. We inherited a situation where there was no doubt in anybody's mind about the extent of Saddam's involvement in weapons of mass destruction.
The left was melting down over that op-ed, and now he's their hero.
Yeah.
And all you have to say is, Trump's a demon. Trump's an existential threat.
Yeah. And then he's embraced. But that's what
Does it change a single vote?
No.
Liz Cheney, she called Trump and Vance misogynistic pigs. Does it change a single vote?
Do endorsements change anything really? In the long run, I don't think so. Will the RFK Jr. endorsement of Donald Trump change the minds of Democrats? Maybe in swing states. I don't really know. But I think Dick Cheney has not said anything at all about Donald Trump in years. George W. Bush hasn't said anything in years. They're irrelevant right now. And so I don't think it's going to matter one way or the other.
I wonder whether ABC knows that or whether this is getting incorporated into a question right now.
Right.
I bet we will hear the name Cheney tomorrow night. Larry, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
It's wonderful to see you again.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to be right back with Adam Carolla. Don't go away. Did you know there is nearly $1 trillion of infrastructure and pandemic funds yet to be spent? Joe Biden's going to be doling these out like Hunter Biden pardons. That's right. There is a massive amount of money that the lame duck administration is pushing right now to spend in their last few months. If the president is able to push these funds out, what do you think is going to happen? We could see another prolonged inflation surge, just like during COVID. But there is some hope. A gold IRA from Birch Gold Group can be an inflation hedge for your savings in uncertain times. To see how to protect your IRA or 401k, get your free info kit on gold by texting MK to 989898. Birch Gold makes it super easy. It's seamless to roll over your retirement account if you would like to, while preserving your tax advantage status. Don't wait for the president's spending spree to potentially tank the dollar further. Protect your financial future right now. Text MK to the number 989898 for your free info kit from Birch Gold. Joining me in person right here at the SiriusXM studios in Los Angeles, one of my favorite guests and one of my favorite people. Someone who has great takes on the news, always, and makes us laugh at the same time. The one and only Adam Carolla. He's host of the Adam Carolla Show podcast, and he joins me in person here. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Great to see you. We left off with Larry Elder talking about Dick Cheney and how he's now the second coming, according to the left. They love Dick Cheney now. Glenn Greenwald just had a tweet that reads as follows: if literal Adolf Hitler were found alive and said bad things about Trump, he'd have a popular afternoon show on MSNBC within weeks and a regular stint on Morning Joe.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. Oh, Larry Elder, the black face of white supremacy.
That's right.
Was
that's
in
right.
Here.
The
Man,
LA Times has told
that
us
guy
all.
Scares me. Yeah, with all this racism. So listen, they don't care, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot. I mean, the left doesn't care. Like, remember when "Don't Say Gay" bill came out, right? And they were like, "Don't say gay" is a whole bill, and then 10 minutes later, like, yeah, we're moving on. So they don't really care. Like they love Dick Cheney now that he's, not going to support Trump. They called him a, murderer, 10 minutes before that. They really don't care what they're on to or off to. JD Vance is a weird guy. He's weird. And then they're done.
Yeah.
So whatever the hot thing is, they'll jump on and they'll jump off.
Well, that's like Kamala finally updated her website to have some policies on it, which is wonderful because people are starting early voting in Pennsylvania in, I think, 8 days. And all throughout the website, it's her supposed position on something. And then Trump's Project 2025 plans. To the point where I said to my staff, are they espousing Trump's actual positions or the 2025 project positions? Because those are two very different things. It's something he's disavowed many times. And it's a mix. So she's intentionally confusing the issue, right? They don't care. There's not a tether to honesty.
Yeah, well, the thing that's, disingenuous on their behalf is there is no footage of Trump saying, I'm down with the 2025 cause, and then him circling back and changing his mind. There's none of that. There's tons of footage of Kamala Harris saying, I'm against fracking. I want all electric cars by, 2035. Whatever's going on, nobody's illegal, so on and so forth. Like, there's plenty of high-def footage of her in her 50s saying these things.
Yes, right.
There's zero of Trump saying, I'm back the 2025 project, yet he backs it and she is disavowed all her stuff and doesn't need to be held accountable for it. So I don't think they believe it. I'm not sure. I'm now kind of at the point where I'm like, I don't really think they think this. I think they, good people on both sides, or Haitian men being beaten by Border Patrol on horseback or whatever. I don't think they just say it.
Yep.
So they don't really think it, which is kind of sad. But
the same media recently, this weekend, acted like Jesus himself had visited the spice store. I don't know if you saw any of this video, but you're going to enjoy this. Okay, so Kamala Harris in Pittsburgh goes to this spice store. It's Penzies. And so she did one of those prearranged stops where the cameras just happened to catch her dealing with people inside the shop, and it was absolutely pathetic. Someone was crying, and they tried to make Kamala look like Kamala, you know, the comforter in chief. Just watch some of this. Watch this.
What is that about? I think you understand. I'm pretty sure you know. Oh, it's gonna be good. We're gonna be good. We're gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine. We are all in this together. Yes, we are. We're gonna be fine. We are. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. You're so the best person. Oh, it's all good. It's all good. We're standing strong, right? We love our country.
Absolutely.
Right?
I'm a lawyer in Pittsburgh here, and I just admire your work so much.
Good. What kind of law you practice?
Consumer protection.
Good for you.
I'm protecting consumers.
Good for you. You know, that's the work I did as AG.
Yes,
that's good stuff.
Yes,
that's really good stuff. So you deliver a message to your teacher, and you're going to have to say, the Vice President asked me to deliver this message. Okay, here's the message. Thank you for being a teacher. Will you do that for me? Okay, high five. There we go.
All right. Let me just give you a representative take from the left. Katie Fang, MSNBC, she has her own show. Take a moment to appreciate the kindness and humanity, to comfort a total stranger, to encourage a young lawyer, to express gratitude to a teacher, and to inspire a new generation of leaders. And the best, to reassure them that we are all in this together. Okay. Washington Post decided to tell us exactly what spices she bought, because that's exciting to know, just in case you wanted to know. It was Tuscan Sunset salt-free Italian seasoning, among others. And then you've got CNN's Bakari Sellers. Trump probably wouldn't let the lady touch him. And Vance has the compassion of a potato. I don't remember, Adam, this kind of fawning coverage when Vivek Ramaswamy comforted a woman who was near tears, who was really scared about what's happening to our republic on the campaign trail. When Trump left the stump to go make sure somebody who had fainted in the crowd, just recently, I think it was post-assassination attempt, to make sure that she was okay and that she got Kamala Harris. It was post-assassination. Kamala Harris, that happened at her rally. Nothing. She didn't go down to comfort her. But he and Vance, they're potatoes. They don't understand compassion.
It's strange to me that the media never learned their lesson from the last round. You know, like I think after the last election, the plan was, all right, listen, you're bleeding viewers, tack back toward the center, try to be a little more even-handed, and see if you can scratch back some of your reputation. Because I wouldn't listen to MSNBC or CNN or LA Times or New York Times if they said something now. I'd just be like, unless they were talking about an earthquake or a tsunami.
Yeah.
But then they'd say Trump caused the earthquake. So then I wouldn't believe them again. But it's weird that they're still fawning and that no one got the message that you're not supposed to come across this way, meaning if I was a dad and I volunteered to umpire my kid's Little League game and then my son was pitching, I'd be rooting for my son to throw strikes, but if he bounced one to home plate, I wouldn't call it a strike because I'd be worried about the optics and other parents looking at me going, maybe that guy isn't calling balls and strikes. Maybe he's a fan of his son who's on the pitcher's mound. So I don't get why they do that. But a bigger picture and a bigger problem is the currency we're giving to compassion. It's ridiculous. It shouldn't have anything to do with running for office or being in a leadership position. I mean, the reason Los Angeles is an S show in terms of the homelessness is because we decided to treat them with dignity and compassion. That was our move. We're not going to go tell these people they have to get up or go into a shelter or pull them, whatever. And we worked a sort of Mamala route with homelessness, and they did it in Portland. They do it in every progressive city. We're gonna treat criminals with compassion and dignity. We're gonna treat, we're gonna be a sanctuary city. No one's illegal. We're gonna have compassion. And then it immediately turns into an S show because we have no infrastructure to support that.
Well, and honestly, tell Laken Riley's family about how compassionate it is to let these illegals in.
Well, yeah. So the idea that we're putting this premium on who seems to be nicer is ridiculous because all we want is some Middle East, we want some Middle East peace. We want a stout border. We want to lower interest rates. It's all nuts and bolts. It's not hugs and teddy bears.
Right.
And also, I don't trust these people at all. Okay. remember Ellen started her show?
Yeah, the dancing.
Yeah, turned out she didn't do so much dancing as soon as she got...
She was a bully.
Okay, she danced. Remember the Bill Cosby show?
Oh,
he was a big dancer too.
It's true.
Somebody sent me yesterday a tweet, a picture, and I think it was Newsweek. Oh, it could have been Time magazine or whatever. 1994, big picture of Rosie O'Donnell wearing pastels, and it said like the Queen of Nice, and she was like,
oh wow,
yeah. So all the laughing. I mean, think about it. Kamala Harris, like picture Rosie in her first iteration. Daytime TV, mid-90s. Oh, cutie patootie chub club.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Tom Cruise.
A League of Their Own version.
Right. Then picture Ellen, picture Bill Cosby. Now think Kamala Harris.
That is so true.
Yeah. Like, picture that. What is she? Well, I don't know what the stats are. Out of 93 staff members, 89 of them quit or moved on or whatever. Is that Mrs. Loves to... So how could you be that compassionate, that warm, that friendly, that gregarious, and have 93% of your staff move on?
That is so true. At least with Trump, you know what you're getting. No one's surprised to learn Trump may be short with people behind the scenes who don't do what he wants.
Yes.
But she's just dropped an ad trying to bring up, oh, none of his people endorse him. But with her, it's, oh, she's Mamala. Look how fun she is. She's so warm. She's brat. I don't see the renewed reporting on how all of her staff is left in tears because she wouldn't do the work and then she blamed all of them.
Yes. I'm just saying beware of the dancers. Beware of the big laughers on camera.
Yes. By the way, this is making the rounds. There's some clip of her complaining about her lipstick going on the Starbucks white lids when she drinks the coffee. And it's, again, like her weird, over-the-top laughter. And honestly, to me, it plays right into the left's always looking for a way to be victims. Watch this.
So you know how those lids are, because this is, well, I'm just going to speak, okay? So
somebody added the Jerry
So
Seinfeld.
you know how those lids on those Starbucks cups, they're white, right? And so if you wear lipstick, they get all over the lid. And so then I find myself in meetings if I'm the only woman, and that's kind of, and so I keep taking the lid off and having my cup out so that I don't have that big lipstick mark on the lid. So I said, can we do something about the color of the lid? So that was that conversation.
Oh my God. That was originally back in at Spelman College in 2018. And they obviously made a spoof out of it.
Yeah, I've really been studying overtly over the top nice people and realizing a lot of them miss and lack character. And they're making bad decisions. Like I said, I feel it being a citizen of Los Angeles because we do the nice thing, but it's not the right thing. You know what I mean? We're sort of like, oh, let the kid eat the sugar smacks for breakfast. And then the dad goes, he needs a poached egg and wheat toast, you know? And they go, oh, Mr. Meanie, you know what I mean? But the kid's getting fat.
Yeah, right.
That's what I'm saying.
That's right.
We need to tact back toward a little more of a, drill sergeant, football coach, like a little,
Yeah.
we're gonna sweat on the mat. This is a dojo thing. Sweat on the mat so you don't have to bleed in the street.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
I too, I have the same reaction when somebody's over the top friendly toward me because there's no way that's genuine. That's not how people are built. So it's like, why are you having to pretend? What's really in your heart? I mean, not to bring Bill O'Reilly into it, but I will give him credit. You used to sit down on his set and I'd say, how you doing, Bill? And he'd go, I'm the same, Kelly. The same.
At least you used your your last name, right?
That was his the way
I
he
know.
did
It's
it.
like, oh, you doing? Wait, what's going on, Corolla?
No.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
That's it. I mean,
do it live.
You kind of appreciate, there's no attempt to really hide one's actual nature.
Well, I mean, it's interesting philosophical discussion. Like I like you a lot. I assume you like me, but I don't feel the necessity to be bubbly and win you over.
Yeah.
I'd rather win you over with my ideas and deeds too. Like, you don't hear stuff I've been up to where you go, oh man, that's kind of a turnoff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just like dignity, sort of quiet dignity, but character, just living a life that's character driven, and not trying to, I mean, look, here's the era we're living in. Subaru makes cars with love. Their cars are made with love now. And every Subaru commercials, the mixed lesbian couple who rescued the otter, and they're going up into the mountains, and there's no talk about powertrain warranty. There's no talk about gas mileage. There's no sticker price car. There's no torque, horsepower, rust proofing. There's no talk about anything. It's made with love.
Yeah.
Okay, I looked into this. Subaru is a big company. Subaru makes helicopters for the Japanese military and drones as well. So they make stuff for
Not
killing
so loving.
people.
Not so loving.
Not with love. That's a different division. So this
killing division.
It's every commercial you now see that's all just hugs and good vibes. These are multinational corporations who are firing people, outsourcing to China, doing whatever they can do to save a nickel, polluting the oceans and the waterways. Do they care? They're made with love.
Mm-hmm.
It's an automobile that's made of bonderized steel and galvanized aluminum. Made with love?
Why do I need them to love me? I don't need them to love me.
No, it's for dumb people to believe that, oh, that's not who they're not just some huge Japanese corporation that uses raw materials and stamps.
But
and
I honestly, it's
shapes.
like, that's fine. She can be so super bubbly and loving, but you actually look at her policies. And again, ask Lake and Riley whether this is a loving administration. Ask the kids, the detransitioners who have had their body parts chopped off under a medical profession that they are endorsing to push this kind of madness on children. We could go on. But this Spice Shop incident is indicative of exactly this problem, because she goes in there, she's hugging and she's lovey, and she's saying it's time to turn a page on the divisiveness. It's time to bring our country together. That's what she said. Well, why did she choose Penzies? All right. On its website, Penzies, which I think is owned by Bill Penzi, who has posted several statements, it's a spice shop. And they have some 49 stores throughout the United States. They have a post, it's been there for a while, called About Republicans. We really have no hate for Republican voters, none at all, they write. And this is by Bill Penzi. We understand, he signs it Bill. I assume it's the CEO, Bill Penzi, who would pen such a thing on their website. I actually like and respect most of you guys. Sure, there are a growing number that are there for the racism, but I still believe the majority of you have good hearts. Going forward, we would still be glad to have you as customers, but we're done pretending the Republican Party's embrace of cruelty and racism, COVID lies, climate change denial, and threats to democracy are anything other than the risks they legitimately are. Okay, so they call this America's wokest company. She sees this statement ripping on Republicans as they embrace cruelty and racism, and most of them are there for the racism, and has the nerve to walk in there and say, I'm here to turn the page on divisiveness, to bring our country together.
He's a good and decent man. Yeah, as far as me and the Republicans, I come for the misogyny, but I stay for the racism. That's what drew me in initially,
That's the other thing, right? Liz Cheney's out there. They're misogynist pigs. JD Vance and Trump are misogynist pigs. The crazy thing is...
Well,
go ahead.
How can we be saying unity and calling someone Hitlerian and misogynistic and racist, simultaneously? I would never want to unify with that person or that group. It can't be both.
No.
You know what I mean? So that's number one. Now, I love climate change because I was driving here. I've lived in the LA my entire life, and I was driving here, and they're talking about the heat wave, and they go, we set a record yesterday for hottest day in the Reseda or somewhere in the valley where I grew up. And it said besting the record from 1979, 45 years ago. Like, I was in high school when the record was set with no air conditioning, by the way, in the San Fernando Valley.
So not so changey.
It took 45 years to get another degree.
Right. But it started up again.
It started again.
You know, it's funny because on your point earlier, I flew out here yesterday, and on the plane, they were showing a bunch of movies, and I actually had time to watch one. So I was like, all right. So one of the things I watched was this movie about the young woman's clothing store, Brandy Melville, and the name of it was Brandy Hellville. And my daughter loves this store. I was like, oh, what did they do? I'm kind of curious. So I start watching this. And like, they're lamenting that it's like fast-made fabric that gets thrown away too quickly and it winds up in, African countries where they can't handle the clothing. I mean, like, that's the fault of this one store? Okay. Right. I mean, like, how many could we blame it? But anyway, I'm wondering why they're picking on this one store so much. And about halfway through, we get to it. The owner is not a girl named Brandy Melville. It's a guy in Italy who's a conservative, who is pro-Trump.
Oh, here we are.
And honestly, and I watched it to the end, and as far as I can tell, other than some weird, inappropriate text that they got to hold on the internal Slack channel, this is why they hate him, and this is why we're all supposed to look at this company as Hellville, because they asked the young girls to post pictures of themselves in the Brandy Melville clothes, which they then put on Instagram. Well, that's what the fashion industry is all about, people. It's just, you can't go anywhere, Adam. I just wanted a little, airplane entertainment.
Well, let's not forget this. Biden, this time 4 years ago, was running on unifying and stopping all the vitriol and putting our differences aside. And Uncle Joe, the elderly statesman who runs down the middle, was going to just bring us together and we'll get away from the chaos that is Donald Trump. That was the promise 4 years ago. Then the guy went on a tour where he basically worked race into every single speech, agitating every person that wasn't white, saying white supremacy was the bigger, and doing much more divisive agitation than anyone who came before him. And now we're supposed to believe this isn't going to happen again.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, that was just the promise.
She's on camera saying, be more woke. That's the answer to everything. More woke.
Biden at least had the dignity to lie when he was running, saying, we're just going to tack back toward the middle. We're going to stop. We're going to cool the temp, stop the vitriol, and we'll bring sort of civility and sanity back to the United States. Now, he didn't do any of that, but who knows what he knows, and he's probably just being told to say something. But Kamala, I would have nothing that would lead me to believe that this would happen again. And by the way, how could it if the rules are like, so here are the rules on the left. We would like to turn your city into a sanctuary city. We would like to protest on behalf of Hamas. We would like 13-year-olds getting their genitalia cutting off. And then if I say something about it, now there's a problem, and now there's agitation. Well, excuse me, crazy person. You can't. If I had a roommate and he said, my policy is I always leave the refrigerator door open and I never do my dishes and I don't flush the toilet, I'd go, well, that's not right. And then he'd go, oh, starting trouble, are we?
No unity.
No unity for you. It's like, yeah, you come in here with a bunch of crazy ideas and policy that's destructive and hurtful. And when I raise my hand and go, I'm not down with that, then you go, oh, I thought we had unity.
They're so divisive. I'm going to bring back unity to the country. So enter Ron Howard, who I'm so disappointed in little Opie. So he made the movie JD Vance, Hillbilly
Worst
Elegy.
Metallica song ever. Enter Ron Howard.
He made the movie Hillbilly Elegy couple of years ago based on JD Vance's best-selling book. And good for him for making the movie, even though at that point we knew that JD Vance, seemed to be more Republican-leaning, but more of a Trump whisperer at that point who could explain the white working class as opposed to, it's fine to be a Republican as long as you're never Trump Republican.
Right.
And so he makes this movie about him. And just like Glenn Close, who felt the need to take a shot at JD Vance rather than just keeping her pie hole shut.
Oh, yeah, she played the mom.
She played the
Mama.
the mama who changed his life. And so Ron Howard is asked about this new evil JD Vance.
Yes.
And whether he regrets making this film. And instead of taking the high road, Adam, I stand by the storytelling. It was a great American story, and I'm not going to weigh in beyond that. That's for the voters to decide. He goes full low road. Watch.
I have been surprised and and concerned by a lot of the rhetoric, coming out of that campaign. Given the experience that I had then, 5-6 years ago, I'd say that I've been surprised. Listen to what the candidates are saying today. That's what's really relevant. It's who they are today, and make a decision, an informed one.
But then he added more. He gave an interview to Deadline, and he said, here's the question, by the way, from Deadline. You made an underdog story about a poor young man from a dysfunctional family with a grandmother who would not let him fail. He has evolved from that young man into a polarizing, volatile conservative. Nice objective question, Deadline.
Yeah.
I'm sure people have said to you, Ron, what have you unleashed? How do you process that? Blah, 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 blah. I'm very surprised and disappointed by much of the rhetoric I'm reading and hearing. People do change, and I assume that's the case. So he's surprised, disappointed at the rhetoric, and he's concerned about it and really wants people to listen to what they're saying and then vote accordingly. None of that on the Kamala Harris side, none of that when they called him a Hitler, none of that against the complaints that he's a misogynist, to actually, in this case, give the other side and say, you know what? I know he said some things that are controversial, but the man I came to know was raised by strong women who changed his life, and I have to believe they had a long-lasting effect on this man.
Yeah, well, it's interesting when you think about a guy like Ron Howard, because he'll say things I've heard coming out of their campaign, things you read on Variety and USA Today and LA Times and New York Times. There are people in my life who I talk to all the time. They legitimately have no idea about what the story, what the true comments, good people on both sides or whatever. They have no inject bleach. He said inject bleach. I read 10 articles that said, why should I hire, why do I want to vote for a guy who said inject bleach, or that, all Muslims were terrorists or something
dictator,
like that. And he said, he said he was going to be a dictator and bloodbath on the, I think first day's dictator, second day's bloodbath. But either way, why would I? So to be fair to Ron Howard, he may just be reading this stuff in the places he gets his information, which could be the LA Times, in which case he would think that that's what they're doing. They go,
needs to cast a wider net.
JD Vance said school shootings were a good thing, and he hopes there's more of them. Right. Oh, man, well, I wouldn't vote for that guy.
Not voting for that.
He swims in a swimming pool with a shirt on. I'm not voting for him. So Ron is probably in the bubble. The bubble gets their info from within the bubble, and many of them legitimately do not have any idea what is going on outside of that group. And when they get their information from CNN, but it could be ABC or NBC, it doesn't have to be, MSNBC, they get their version of he said school shootings were a nice thing, and then they believe it, and then they form their opinions. Mm-hmm. Now, what is kind of on them is everyone needs to be a little more dubious. You know what I mean? When you hear that headline.
At this point, the media is lying to you about Trump. You must know this.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a two-way street. You'll see conservative things come out that says, Tim Walz said the Holocaust was a good thing, and I go, he probably said something about the Holocaust, but I don't think the right media doesn't do it nearly as much. And the left, that's what they do. That's their thing, is twisting stuff. But as a person that consumes information and then has to report it, on the air, you have to kind of put on your hat that has a big question mark on it and kind of go, let me look into this a little more. Like, even if look, if JD Vance thought school shootings were good, why would he say that into a microphone in front of a crowd?
Truly
you know
stupid.
What I mean? Like that's something he wouldn't do it even if he thought that. So let me go back and watch the tape. And they don't do it.
The number of flip-flops that she's done, I think the left has heard about these. They just don't care. They like the original positions. They believe her, that her values haven't changed. They know she's got to say they've changed in order to win this election. And over the weekend, one of her campaign spokespeople came out and really put a new spin on it. But I think it was a fine spin for the left. They'll go along with this. This is Ian Sams on Thursday, actually. It was on CNN. Take a listen to SOT 25.
She's been part of the Biden administration. I mean, she has been part of the Democrats have been in control of the country for the last 3 going on 4 years. And you are still seeing this in the polling. I mean, these working class voters are telling us right now that more of them are with Donald Trump than Kamala Harris. Why? What is it about what you guys have been doing for the last 3+ years that explains that?
Well, I think, again, we're trying to talk to the voters and explain this message. We've got 60 days until the election. We don't have time to sit around and think about why over the last few years certain things may have happened or may not have happened.
You don't?
No.
Probably his wallet looks pretty good. His trips to the grocery store are not stressful. And this is one of her top people saying, we really don't have time to think about why what happened over the past 3.5 years happened. Just vote Kamala Harris.
Yeah, so we're at an inflection point as far as I can tell, which is sort of Subaru good vibes taking over Ford tough, built Ford tough, and Subarus are built with love, right? Mm-hmm. And the people like us go, I'm just a brass taxer. I want to know all the information and all the policy. But there's enough, and I think what it is enough men have sort of slid over to the good vibes made with love department. It's probably circulating estrogens and too much plastic in our food and low testosterone.
Could be a thing.
Oh, yeah. No, guys are turning into women, essentially.
They're losing all their sperm.
They're losing all whatever made them dudes, and so they're not worried about powertrain warranties anymore. They're worried about puppies and love and lesbians and station wagons. So that's where we're heading. And all politicians do is they go, ooh, we're drifting toward love. So Kamala Harris is all, Joe Biden, do you think he knows who Dylan Mulvaney is? You think he cares about the trans community? You think he knows any of this stuff?
I think Dylan Mulvaney sat down with Joe Biden, but that doesn't mean
no,
Biden
he doesn't know who he is. He didn't know who he was 10 seconds before that, never
still
cared.
Doesn't know.
Still doesn't know. The point is they licked the finger. Somebody told him, we're drifting toward the feminization and the love, and there's more dudes turning into women every day. Mm-hmm. So I don't mean physically, I'm talking about like chemical castration,
exactly.
just turning into females. And why not run on good vibes? So what they're saying, what Kamala's side is saying is, look, we don't need to get into all the nuts and the bolts of the policies and the feds and the reserve and the oil reserves and drilling and fracking, border. What are we doing that? We're good vibes. He's mean. Yells and stands there at looking very Mussolini-esque. So we're just running over that. Now, as far as the technical stuff, the actual policies, just do what they do in the Subaru commercials.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it.
That's
we're talking
right.
about this.
That's what I think she's going to do tomorrow night. She's going to do like economy, opportunity economy, and we're going to protect seniors.
Right.
And we're going to clean up the environment.
Right.
It's just going to be these sweeping, empty promises. I don't think she's going to drill down on any policies because she's got to stay as close to generic Democrat as she can. Although, I mean, as I discussed with Larry Elder, right now that's not working that well for her because that latest New York Times Siena poll shows her support is not that strong. She's not as strong with traditional voting blocks within the Democratic Party as they expected her to be. And the only group she's really doing well with, to your point, is women. The gender gap is real. Harris has got 39% of men Trump has got 56% of men. Harris has got 53% of women. Trump has got 42% of them. But there's only so far the sort of interesting message of love and abortion can get you.
Yes. Yeah, well, I mean, it's sort of, to me, it could all be distilled down into the concept of a sanctuary city. If you wanted to kind of go, well, what's a feminine thought? What's a masculine thought? You know, and you could talk about energy and taxation and borders and things like that. But the cities that went, we are a sanctuary city, all are welcome, all shall be treated with dignity and respect and love, and have zero plans in place when the buses started pulling up, and now people are splayed out in the parks and the streets and in the gymnasiums where the taxpayers' kids used to play, and so on and so forth. That is the actual representation of good vibes policy. It sounds awesome. You know what I mean? We're sanctuary city. Everyone's welcome. There, no humans illegal. What actually happens when people start spilling into the city?
You know what, Adam, I'm
chaos
listening to you. I'm so
destruction.
annoyed. I'm annoyed because it's like, this isn't feminine. Feminine women are Republicans. Not all of them, but generally the women in the Republican Party tend to be feminine and strong and amazing, and the men more and more are more masculine. And if you look at, not all Democrats, a lot of my friends are wonderful Democrats, but the left, the progressive left, this is not what a woman is. This sort of afraid, overly emotional, lead with love and let the illegals. That is the worst kind of feminism I've ever seen. I don't understand these women at all. They don't represent me or any of.
And to be clear, you know, Margaret Thatcher was a female who did not embody these thoughts that we speak of. And when I talk about this in private, your name comes up as one of the leaders in the clubhouse of females who should not be mistaken for this kind of thinking.
Thank you. Yes. But it's like, I hate the way it's going. Like, the Democrat Party is the party of no spine unless it comes to shutting you up and shoving wokeness down your throat. And the Republican Party has all of the strength and the robust nature that's necessary for governing, but as a result will be made into demons by that left, which happens to control all of the message boards throughout the country and beyond. That's really what's happening. And they're gonna claim feminism and womanhood. These women who are gonna vote for Kamala Harris somehow represent like the feminism, like the new feminism in America. And I just reject that. Feminists, what feminists should be is strong, fierce, smart women who stand up for what they believe in, but haven't forgotten the glories of being a woman, the wonders of softness, and not overly emotionalism, but emotionalism, where that's why men love us. They need a soft place to fall. They need, my husband and I go in to see like the decorator, and we're redecorating a room, and it's like the decorator's talking about all the wallpapers and the, you know, sofas, and then he gets to the cost and he's like, well, and he looks at Doug when he says what the number's going to be. And Doug's like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, YOLO!
Yeah.
But it works. Like, that's how men and women work together. One is more sober and one is more fun, or one is more of the, whatever. They want men out of the picture altogether. All they want is the far left angry woman who's going to emasculate men. All of it makes me recoil.
You know, I think what we need to do from a message standpoint, I agree with your soliloquy. What we need to do is, as the guy, you know, I'm the guy going at home, diet and exercise. These kids got to get some exercise, and no, you can't eat taffy for breakfast and whatever. And then I get labeled as the mean one.
Fine.
Because I'm saying that. And I think a lot of the stuff we're talking about that's sort of coming out of conservatism is diet and exercise. And now we're being labeled mean because their personal trainer wants them to watch TV and eat fudge.
They will be dead by age 50.
Right. And I'm saying, I'm not a bad person for suggesting you do things that are good for you. That makes me a good person who doesn't dance like Ellen. But I know you don't like the message, and I know you don't want to get up and do some road work in the morning. And I know you would rather have Honey Smack cereal than a poached egg. But let's not confuse me with someone who's hurting somebody. I'm actually helping somebody. And there's a lot of that, like, for instance, even going way back here in LA especially, they had an English only in school thing. And then all the nice people were going, they should be taught in their native tongue. And it's like, yeah. And then they graduate and they can't speak English and they can't get a job. So who's the mean one in this equation? The guy who says, let them learn English in the first and second grade and they'll get fluent in it and they'll move on and then they could get a job, or the nice person who's saying teach them in their mother language?
Better to have a couple rough years when you're 7 than when you're 20 looking for a job.
I'm saying diet. You're saying Ozempic. You know what I mean? Why am I the bad one in this equation? COVID comes down the pike, and I'm saying lose some weight, get some exercise, and everyone's yelling at me, get vaccinated and stay home. And I'm like, shut the school down. I'm saying open the school. I'm the bad guy for saying open the school. Now the kids have fallen off. They're way behind. Depression, suicide, whatever comes along with sheltering in place for 2 damn years. Why am I the bad guy in this equation?
And then when you are proven right, they move on. They don't admit it. They move on. They may do the same quote mistakes. And a new way forward, you might call it.
That's right.
Adam Carolla stays with us. A quick break first. Okay. You do a lot of things, right, to maintain and protect your home. But are you cleaning your gutters? Are you cleaning your gutters, Adam Carolla?
Have my lady do that.
Your lady.
I'm too dainty. My hands are too dainty for it. Plus, I just got a cuticle push.
So honestly, same. I've never cleaned a gutter in my life, but you're a man and you're kind of a man's man, so I thought we had a shot. Well, most people don't do this, and then it actually winds up a problem because clogged gutters can cause flooding, roof damage, rotted siding, all sorts of bad things. You could try to do it yourself, but if even Adam Carolla doesn't do it, how's it going to wind up for you? It's not going to go well. You know how much our family loves our dogs. Yes, even our just very difficult to control Strudwick. He's so difficult, but he's awesome in his own way. They have a great life. They are lucky, but many dogs are not so lucky, and we need to help them. And this is why I'm so glad to tell you about Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They've rescued thousands of dogs, plus cats and horses too. They provide all of their animals with shelter and safety, and most of all, love. And they've been doing it for more than 45 years now. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions to stay open, and giving can bring tax benefits to you, too. So speak with your estate planner about how you can grow your estate while helping animals in need. And check out the estate planning tab on their website if you want to learn more. We love our Thunder and Strudwick, but would like other dogs who need love to find it, too. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. You didn't vote for this economic downturn and the high inflation, but you could pay for it at the pump, the grocery store, and with growing stacks of unpaid bills. Financial stress can be crushing, and one solution could be donewithdebt.com. Done with Debt created new, aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently without bankruptcy or loans. Done with Debt can stand between you and your bill collectors, and they'll negotiate with your creditors to write off balances, cut interests, and stop penalties. And the best news is Done with Debt is accepting new clients right now. But you do need to hurry because some of their debt relief strategies are time sensitive and you don't want to miss out. Let Done with Debt hit the debt reset button for you and make your money yours again. Visit donewithdebt.com or call 1-888-322-1054 right now. Chat with one of their debt relief strategists for free. That's donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com. The big debate tomorrow night, and it's hosted by ABC News. And this, a new study by the Media Research Center, finds that of the big 3 evening newscasts, none of which is pro-Trump, ABC's World News Tonight, which is hosted by David Muir, who's going to be one of the debate moderators, has been the most positive toward Harris and the most hostile to Donald Trump. MRC analysts reviewed all 100 campaign stories that aired on World News Tonight from the day Harris entered the race on July 21 through September 6th, including weekends. The analysis found 25 clearly positive statements about Harris from reporters, anchors, voters, and other nonpartisan sources, with 0 negative statements, none. That computes to a gravity-defying 100% positive spin score for the vice president. As for Trump, our analysts found just 5 clearly positive comments versus 66 negative statements for a dismal 7% positive, 93% negative spin score. This will be our debate host tomorrow night.
Yeah. So it's also it's an interesting rule that we sort of struck with the left and the progressives, which is, all right, so you get your progressive moderators to do the debate, but what if we want on the next debate someone who thinks more aligned with us? And they're like, well, we can't do that. And it's like,
Right.
Why not? Why, if it's on CNN one time, then it should be on Fox the next time.
Right.
Why is there not? What's unthinkable about that? And they're like, because your guys are partisan. And it's like, yeah, do you have a mirror in the dressing room? Because that's what you guys do. Now, there is a kind of a phenomenon that could happen, which is they know that the optics of this are sort of that way. And sometimes you can overcompensate to try to do away with those optics. Back to the coach who has his son on the team. There's a definite phenomenon where the coach is tougher on his son on the Pop Warner football team because he doesn't like the optics of.
No way are they going to be tougher on her.
No,
but they might
no,
be
just
fair.
even-handed is enough.
That'd be huge. Well, look at what happened with Tapper and Dana Bash on the CNN debate between Trump and Biden. They were fair. They played that one right down the middle. And so, honestly, to my point of, you're not going to find somebody who's totally nonpartisan to host any presidential debate. Journalists have strong opinions about the candidates in the news. It's enough if they can check the bias in actually hosting the debate. And that was great that they managed to do that CNN debate. And I certainly hope they'll be able to do it tomorrow night in the ABC debate. But it only works one way. They'll only let the leftists have the opportunity to check their bias. If you're in any way a conservative or associated with the right, you will not be given the opportunity to even try.
Those are the rules.
It's so annoying. All right, so tomorrow night, what do you think Trump's got to do? Because it is neck and neck right now. And if you look at how it's going, Trump is doing pretty well in these polls that had him considerably behind, for example, in 2016, where he won, and way behind in 2020, where he did lose, but only by a smidge. And now they're showing him up, or at least tied. So, the smart man's bet is it's his to lose. Nate Silver's saying he's got a 63% chance of winning. So what do you think he needs to do tomorrow?
I think Trump needs to kind of take a page out of Biden's playbook, and which is less is more. Kamala Harris has to kind of go, here's who I am, here are my policies, because we've had enough of not hearing any policy from her. Trump spits out policies over and over and over again. We all get it. So I think he needs to hang back. I interviewed Tucker Carlson on my podcast, a year or so ago, and we were talking about Trump and how he torpedoes himself in debates by talking over the person. And so as soon as I heard they were shutting the mics in the Biden-Trump debate, I was like, oh, that's going to aid Trump. And everyone thought, no, that's Biden. Yeah, Biden wants it. But that doesn't mean it's going to help him. And it certainly didn't.
Right.
And so what Trump would do traditionally, it's like if your husband or wife accused you of cheating. And what you don't want them to do is go, I accuse you of cheating, now explain yourself. What you do want them to do is go, I accuse you of cheating. Is it because I put on 5 pounds? No, it's not. I like you the way you are. Is it because
are you a cheater in this situation?
I'm the cheater.
Okay, so the cheating did happen. This is just how you're handling the accusation.
I'm saying
the hypothetical.
Make it and let them answer for it. Don't keep coming at them.
Yeah.
Because when you keep coming at them, you give them the opportunity to A, go, can I talk? And then B, now I'm arguing over your weight. I'm not talking about getting caught cheating.
Mm-hmm.
Just put it out there. Let them sit with it. I mean, that's what happened to Biden. He just sat, and 90 seconds felt like 2 days when he was trying to
Trump
cobble those answers together.
It's crazy if he doesn't get the fact that 10.4 million illegals have come in under Joe Biden under the official numbers, and it was 2.3 under Trump.
Right.
it's very easy to understand. 10.4, 2.3. Explain, Miss Border Czar. That's it.
Right.
Like, let her say her stuff, but those are numbers people can hold on to and digest. It's just, Larry Elder was here before. He's so good with the stats. Trump is not that good with the stats. But if he just keeps saying immigration, economy, inflation, I do think it'll work well.
No, and I agree. And the other thing he does, which doesn't serve him, is he doesn't go 10.2 million illegals crossed into the country. He goes 18 million crossed into the country. And then LA Times fact checks him and goes, that was a lie. Well, the 10 wasn't all a lie.
I know. So you can stick to the real numbers and say it's worse than
Stick to
this.
the number.
Adam, I got to go. It's a pleasure as always.
Always love talking to you.
Talk soon, I hope. All right. Don't forget, we'll have full live coverage tomorrow night on SiriusXM and YouTube after the debate.